What's going on, Grappling fans?
First on it, just getting mentally in the game.
All our matches have been pretty close.
Who's number one?
Hey everybody, welcome to our 40th episode of the Who's Number One podcast. I got Reed here, filling in for Chase today as a co-host with me. Calling in today, we have calling in from I assume New Jersey. We got Garry Tonon. Gordon Ryan should be joining us sometime soon. How you doing, Garry?
I'm doing pretty well, man. I'd imagine with the name like Who's Number One as a show, every time Gordon comes on, he pretty much just talks about how it's definitely him and nobody else. So I don't know how much more than that he's really going to contribute to this, but we'll see. Yeah, man, here in New Jersey, Secaucus. I just moved out here, just moved out of my old apartment and moved everything over at the beginning of the month, and I've been settling in over here.
Is that far from New Brunswick? Is it a different spot?
Yeah. So
far,
where
huh?
my gym is now is East Brunswick. It used to be in like Monroe, but that's about 45 minutes away, depending upon traffic and that sort of thing.
What's going on, Grappling?
And you moved the gym too?
Yeah, moved the gym to East Brunswick. The gym move was more because the lease was ending, and I wanted a slightly bigger space. And the only thing they could offer us in the old building was double the space, and I just thought that was a little bit too much. I'm a big believer in kind of not overdoing it when it comes to getting like a much bigger space. I'd rather like push the boundaries of whatever space it is that you have and have it be like packed than, have a huge vacant space and then try to fill it. I just feel like it gives a better impression when your space has more people in it and it's not like just open with like 5 guys. You know what I mean?
How often are you teaching? Because I mean, you're still doing some grappling stuff. You did ACC. You got pro MMA career. How many classes a day are you teaching when things obviously aren't shut down like this? Are you teaching a lot?
Yeah. So originally, I would say before MMA, I was teaching pretty much 6-7 days a week, depending upon whether or not I had some sort of like seminar that weekend or like, some sort of constraint. If I had like a match or something, I might go away for a week. But for the most part, I was over there every day teaching pretty much every class, even kids classes. But then things kind of, once I started doing MMA, it just was too much of a workload, and I started to kind of shift over and start delegating responsibilities. And now when things are not technically now, but when things were normal, I was teaching. I would still say like about 5-6 days a week, but I would only teach the 7:30 class. Because that was all I could really get back for. Because basically, I still do my jiu-jitsu training the same way that I did when I was just focused on jiu-jitsu, but now I have a sparring session and MMA stuff after. So it takes a lot more time for me to get back home and things. It's just impossible for me to really teach all those classes that I was before. And honestly, it's like a better thing for all my students anyway. It's cool to have like one central person kind of like, teaching and stuff, especially somebody that's like a super high level, but I also honestly think that it takes away a little bit from the improvement of the other gym members because on board and being to other people. And if you can't communicate what you know to other people, how important is how useful is the information you actually have? You can only use it for you. You can't help anybody else. So for a lot of my guys that are interested in maybe opening a school one day or anything like that, now they're getting practice at teaching and things like that. And the school feels more interconnected to a lot of different people instead of just me as a central focus. So I think it was a really good switch and good thing for the gym.
What are you up to these days with the shutdown? What are you doing to pass time right now?
Well, I'm trying to handle as much online responsibilities as I possibly can. So I started hooking up my gym with Zoom classes and things. So I have all my different instructors teaching on Zoom now for the gym. In addition to that, what I'll do is I'll post clips or highlights, and I'll just do like little miniature breakdowns on those clips or highlights, and I'll send them into a student page that I have set up for my gym. In addition to that, we're part of the Tom the Blast Association, which what he's done is he's taken a bunch of different instructors and things from his association, and they're kind of doing the same sort of thing. Like if they teach like a Zoom session or something, they post it up there, and people can watch it, or maybe they'll post like a workout or something. And so there's a lot of resources now for for my students and things. And I'm just trying to keep everybody connected and give as much value as I can, because obviously many members are still paying for the gym and stuff, and it's not the same as like getting to actually go and train. And I feel a sense of responsibility. If people are continuing to pay the business money, I want to make sure that they're getting something out of it. So I'm trying to keep up with that as much as I possibly can. And it's actually it takes more time than I would have imagined it to take, to stay on track of all that and make sure who's teaching and this, that, and the other thing. So I'm surprised. I would have thought that it would have been like a little less time consuming, but it actually, it takes more time than you'd think.
What are the plans for your MMA career once things get started back up? You got like any fights in mind, or what are you planning once? I mean, obviously we don't know the future, but once they get started up, what are you thinking about for MMA?
So I'm still pushing really hard to get that title fight against Martin Nguyen, and that's like my main goal, is to try to progress towards that for the time being. I mean, the ultimate goal is to be like basically like the best mixed martial artist I could possibly be, and try to be up there with the names that are considered to be the best mixed martial artists of all time. But obviously I got to take steps to get there. So getting my first world title in a premier organization, I think is a good way to start heading towards that direction. I have ambitions of also winning the 70-pound title in that organization as well. Then there's some fights that I'm particularly interested in with particular guys, regardless of whether or not it's for a title. Guys like Shinya Aoki, and because I had a previous grappling match with him, I just think it would be a really exciting fight. So I got a lot of work to do at one, I think. So long as as long as they're able to manage well during the whole virus outbreak and stuff, and we're able to continue to put on fights afterwards, so long as they're able to recover from that. It seems like everything's going well. They're having me put out a lot of promotional material and breakdowns, similar to what I'm doing with my school. They're having me do for their organization. So it seems like they're trying to keep busy as well and put out as much content as they can. So it doesn't seem like they're slowing down anytime soon. So I think they're doing all right.
How do you think you match up there with that Martin Nguyen?
I think I match up pretty well. Martin Nguyen is very well-rounded and very comfortable. He's been doing this a lot longer than me, a lot more fights, much better record. I mean, though, technically I'm undefeated, but I just don't have as many fights. So I look at what he's done as more impressive than what I have. The main things to look at with him, he's got a very heavy overhand right that puts a lot of people down, puts a lot of people to sleep. And then he has other skills to follow that up. I just watched, we did a little breakdown of his fight with Christian Lee the other day, which is one of the other champs. I think he's a 70-pound champ right now. And he guillotined him, with like a figure four guillotine from standing after he hit him pretty hard with one of those overhands. And, despite being a jiu-jitsu specialist, I mean, hell, you get a like Dan Henderson, overhand right to the jaw, and all of a sudden, everything you knew about jiu-jitsu doesn't necessarily count for that much, so that could always happen. He's got a lot of ways that he could finish the fight. It's not like he's just got like one particular thing. But I would say that because an overhand right is like kind of his main specialty, and the shoot boxing style that we have is very, very much, whether it's a kick, punch, whatever the case may be, capitalizing on that and then taking somebody down. I do think that it puts him a little bit at risk for a lot of my game and a lot of my specialties. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting matchup. It's a huge step up in competition for me. Hopefully they give me the fight sometime soon. I know they were trying to buffer like maybe one more fight in between. They had me matched up with somebody that was like 12-0 from another organization they were going to bring in. So I don't know if they're still going to make me do that, if maybe they'll push for the title. We'll see.
Reed, you're a big MMA fan.
Love to see that one. That'd be sick, yeah.
You're a big MMA fan. Is there any other fight you would really like to see stylistically for Garry in the future?
Just like in general?
Just in general, anything.
In general? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good matches. Maybe you could see that Davi Ramos rematch in the UFC.
Dude, that was a great fight to win match. That'd be great to see that in MMA.
Great fight to win match. Could be a great fight as well. But
yeah, No, it's great that I'm able to get a little bit of crossover and have some jiu-jitsu matches with some of these guys when when we're not fighting, because it's like that conversation is always out there, like who's the best, like has the best like MMA and best jiu-jitsu and MMA, and at least you can kind of make a little bit of an argument, instead of just like arguing with no substance. Like now I at least had an actual match with him, so I could say something, right? Even though we can't technically fight each other because we're from different organizations, that sucks. But at the same time, you get a little bit of crossover and you can see some of your favorite athletes like competing with one another. I think that's kind of cool. And it adds something to the sport. It's nice that the organizations are able to see past their differences and stuff and be able to allow us to do that kind of stuff, because I think it's really helpful, especially for fans crossing over into different sports and stuff like that.
What about grappling? With your MMA career taking off, how often are we going to see you grappling?
It's a good question. So kind of what I mentioned before with how long I think it's going to take to organize MMA shows, I do think that it's quite possible. Now, this really depends on the way that the coronavirus is handled in Asia comparative to the U.S. And that's going to be a big deciding factor in how quickly grappling matches get started in the U.S. But I would say this: they're already still happening. I mean, Chael is still somehow managing to run a promotion, which is awesome. I'm glad that he's able to do that. I think that's great. But I would probably say, based on the way things are going, that you'd be more likely to see me in a grappling match before you're going to see me in another MMA fight. Just a guess. I can't really say for sure. I don't have anything lined up. Nobody's contacted me, but I'm pretty sure that that's most likely what's going to happen, because I like to stay busy. As much as MMA is my main focus, if I don't have a fight, coming up, then let's do a grappling match. It is what it is.
I feel like Garry might be one of like the busiest people in jiu-jitsu, and like just your team in general, man. I feel like I went out there one time with you guys and did a little bit of the trek that you guys do back and forth, and got a little taste of it. That was plenty enough for me. But man, I feel like this stuff's maybe hitting you guys even extra hard, because you guys are just constantly on the road, back and forth, on a train, up and down the coast there, like. Does it feel like it's hitting you extra hard? Because I know you guys start your day at like 5:30 in the morning, and y'all don't end, like you said, till you've taught the kids class at 7:30 p.m. and then did the 9 p.m. open mat, and then went to bed and woke up at 5:30 the next day. I mean, you guys are crazy busy. So the flip side now is just nothing. Is it extra tough?
It adds a really weird dynamic to things, because I've always since day one, it's not just like, I agree with you, our team is like tends to be like super busy and put up. Oh, look at this guy.
Nice, like with the clean shave.
Yeah,
right.
Clean cut.
Oh,
So there was a reason.
you look like you got like 10 years younger. What the fuck?
Yeah, for real.
We got Nicky Ryan on the call here.
Looks like Nicky Ryan got some new chest tattoos.
Gordon, how's it going, man?
Good. Can't complain.
So, Garry, something I wanted to ask you, since you said that with MMA shutdown, it might be likely that you're going to do some grappling. Obviously, grappling, you don't have the same restrictions you do in MMA, where you have to fight people that are in one or whatever. Like, what are some grappling matches that you think you might like to have?
Well, if we're going to talk about crossovers, like we were talking about before, I think some for me particularly that I want to see myself, but also I think all the fans want to see, would be me and Kron Gracie, which probably will never happen because I've wanted that match for ever since I lost the first one, and it hasn't happened. And I'm gonna go ahead and guess people have probably offered it to him before. So, anytime somebody comes knocking at my door for that match, it's always gonna be a yes for me. So that would be really cool, but I doubt it's going to happen. And then the other one that I think is probably a little bit more likely that a lot of people would really love to see would be me versus Ryan Hall. Because I know Ryan Hall had floated around the idea, I think to Craig Jones or something, the idea that he might be more willing to do a grappling match sometime soon, because he's had big amount of time between his MMA fights as well. I think that would be real big. I think a lot of people would love to see that. So that would be probably like one of the number one matches that I'd be looking for, if possible, if he's interested.
All right, so now that we got you guys both here, something I'd like to hear from you guys is just sort of the origins of how you guys started training, how you guys met each other. Like, I think how Gordon came to come train under you, and like, first off, we'll start with you, Gary. How did you start training out there in New Jersey? What was your sort of origin story like for training?
I was telling you before Gordon chimed in. I was telling you a little bit about how like always kept myself busy, like even from the start. So I was just doing all different kinds of sports and stuff. But honestly, contact sports were just not a thing that I was allowed to do. I remember I was always interested in like football and stuff because I liked the idea of like the tackling and like the hands-on nature of things. You know, just being a male, like, you know, you kind of have those desires to like test yourself physically. And my mom was always like, you're not going to do that. You know, it's too dangerous, this, that, and the other thing, right? So that was never okay.
And now you're an MMA fighter.
Yeah, exactly. And my cousins wrestled out in Pittsburgh. And I think because they did it and none of them got like seriously injured doing it or anything, my mom got a little bit more comfortable with the idea of doing wrestling or something, and they kind of pushed her to let me start doing that. So I started doing wrestling, which, you know, is somewhat closely related to jiu-jitsu because it's grappling art, right? And I met a friend in that, you know, and after a few years or whatever, he started telling me about this jiu-jitsu stuff that he was doing, and I didn't really believe it at all. I thought it was bullshit because he's like, you know, it's like wrestling, but like we like break each other's arms and strangle each other. But I was like 14 years old. I'm like, what do you mean they let like teenagers like strangle each other and break each other's arms? There's no way anybody allows that to happen, you know? So I was like, it blew my mind. You know, I didn't know what UFC was. I didn't know jiu-jitsu existed. I knew none of that stuff. Wasn't introduced to it. Raised by women for the most part. My mom and my sister, you know, were the only ones around the house. So nobody was there to really expose me to that. And when I finally saw it and like him doing it, I was like, wow, this is so much cooler than wrestling. Like, I love wrestling still to this day, but like the idea that you can actually finish somebody, like I can submit somebody, was a really appealing element to the art to me. And I kind of got started that way. He took me to his gym. It was like kind of like a little MMA gym. They did a little bit of jiu-jitsu, a little bit of other things. And I really liked the jiu-jitsu, but the other stuff wasn't, you know, like 100% there for me. So I fell out of focus with that, and my mom couldn't drive me as often. And I eventually found Tom the Blast's gym, like very close to my house. It was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, bike ride or so away from my house. So I could get there myself, so I could finally control, you know, how often I showed up and everything like that and how dedicated I was going to be. So that I pretty much just showed up every single day. And Tom was like a great influence. And I felt like I learned in the first month of jiu-jitsu at Tom's, like more than I had ever learned at the other place. I trained at the other place for like 6 months. And in 1 month, I was like, oh my God, like I know so much more. The other place, I maybe knew how to do like a rear naked choke, and that was it. And I just learned so much so fast. And it seemed like he really broke things down really well. And, you know, it was a very lucky thing that happened in my life, and I'm very thankful for that. You know, and then I took it as far as I did, obviously.
And then Gordon, we haven't got to hear from you yet. Gordon, how old were you when you started training?
I was 15.
15. Did you start with Gary? What school did you start at?
No, I didn't. So I started at Brunswick BJJ, which is now Gary's school. But it was ran by one of Ricardo Almeida's brown belts at the time. His name was Hodds. But he had a full-time job doing security, so he was pretty busy most of the time. So my pretty much main instructor for the first 2 to 2.5 years was Miguel Benitez. He's a black belt under Tom. He runs a school in Montgomery, New Jersey, called Montgomery BJJ. So he was like my first instructor all the way through like 2-stripe blue belt, I would say. And I'd met Gary a few times. Before that, I trained with him. The first time I ever met Gary, he was a brown belt. He just won Nogi Worlds, and I was like a 4-stripe white belt, I believe.
What were your first impressions of Gary? Did you like him?
Yeah. He came in, and I was like still like a shitbag white belt who would just try to beat up like everybody in the gym, like didn't know how to train, was just like a spazzy idiot. And Gary was like my first introduction to someone who would try to get better in training rather than win in training. So Gary was like letting himself get submitted by everybody. And me, like this asshole, like I'm like, oh yeah, I just submitted Gary. Like I let me triangle him, and I finished him. And I felt like I actually submitted him. And then, like the months went on, and he would train more and more because he was at Rutgers. So he would train more and more in Brunswick because it was so much closer than Tom's was. And I was like, I'm gonna be better than this guy in no time. And then like as I got better, he just started going a little harder, and I was like, fuck, I just can't get better than this guy. And then like somewhere close to purple belt, I think. I think it was like a 3 or 4 stripe blue belt. Miguel actually got a full-time job.
That's when Gordon finally knew he was better than me.
No, I definitely had, purple belt was like the worst belt for me. I remember one time, this is like a little bit off topic, but one time I was getting ready for like my first big tournament. It was like a Grappler's Quest Absolute, like a pro division. And like there was some guy who was like good at like taking the back from cross body ride, like the truck. And I asked Garry to like practice taking my back from there. And I like just got my purple belt, and he just like calf sliced me 16 times in a row, like over and over again. And I just couldn't get out. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know why I'm training jiu-jitsu anymore. Like sometime like close to purple belt, Miguel had gotten a full-time job at NJ Transit and couldn't make the night classes anymore. So Garry took over the school as the head instructor, and that's when I started training under Garry full-time.
Gary, so Gordon's obviously, ADCC absolute champ now, pound for pound #1 grappler in the world. What was white belt Gordon like?
Somewhat similar to white belt Garry in the sense that, he was very wild and uncontrolled and, pretty crazy. But he was tough. He was a tough kid, good competitive training, and it was something that I always desired to have. Tough guys in the room pushing the pace and really trying to get better. So I recognized that early on that he had an ambition of being very, very good. And, so I started to bring him in as one of my main training partners, somebody that I trained with more than anyone else, because despite being like a little wild or whatever, it wasn't like he was, he trained in a way that like was going to hurt you or anything. He's controlled enough that he wasn't like such a spazzy retard. He's like elbowing you in the face every 10 seconds. So, it was good controlled training to and push the pace and everything like that. So it was great to have him. But Gordon as a white belt was the main difference between me as a white belt and Gordon as a white belt is Gordon's level of confidence. So I always considered myself to be a relatively confident person. But Gordon, it's so much more so with him. Like it's hard for you guys to really understand. At that point,
I think we got a little bit of an idea, but
I remember around like blue and purple belt, Gordon still like wasn't really a personality in the jiu-jitsu community because, well, number one, social media wasn't as big in the jiu-jitsu community, but number two, like, he just hadn't had like a big enough match yet where anybody gave a shit what he was doing. So I knew exactly who he was as a person. Like I knew how confident and cocky he was and like exactly how he was. So I would constantly like make fun of him online and like talk shit because I had to put this kid down. Like you don't understand. Like if I didn't put him down, like his head would have grown as big as Tom DeBlass's, and in a physical sense. So I had to try to keep him in check, and then everybody would always criticize me, like, "Why are you so mean to that kid? I don't understand."
That's what, I used to think the same thing. When I first found out about him, he was like a teenager, and you used to make fun of him on your Instagram. And I'd be like, "Man, why is Garry always riding this kid?"
So now he's a product of a lot of abuse, and now maybe he just extends that abuse on to you guys now, and everybody that criticizes him on social media. But yeah, man, he was a really dedicated kid, but just very confident in himself, and that's part of the reason I think it kept driving him to come back. A lot of people in jiu-jitsu, realizations about not having an ego, because I actually think it's kind of the opposite of the conversation that really should be had. Like if you have so much of an ego, like if Gordon was so cocky and confident that he came in one day, I beat his ass, and he was like, fuck this, never came back. Yeah, that's a problem. Like if you have so much an ego that you can't lose and continue to try to get better at something, yeah, that's a problem. But the idea that like, oh, you just shouldn't care, like that's retarded. 100%. When you get submitted, like you should be like, oh man, you should be upset with yourself, come back and try to do things better. And so that your ego drives that. Your ego drives like your need to get better than other people. And like a guy like Gordon or even a guy like me is a little different than the average guy that goes into the room. The average guy goes into training thinking, you know what, I'm not okay with walking around in life and having people being able to beat me up. Like, I don't want to be in a situation where somebody's going to kick my ass and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. So I'm going to try jiu-jitsu. So then you try jiu-jitsu and you get to like blue belt level or whatever, and you're probably going to be able to kick most people's ass that are on the street. No problem. You know, somebody attacks you, you're going to be able to defend yourself. But then you're not a guy like me or Gordon's not happy with that, because we're still getting tapped out in the training room. We're like, this is fucking bullshit. We got to get better. Like, I got to be able to submit that guy. And then you want to be able to submit everybody in your training environment. And then that's not enough. You're like, well, I can submit everybody in my training environment, but there's still black belts out there that are way better than me. You know, so I got to be able to beat those guys. And now all of a sudden you're trying to be the absolute best in the world. So your ego drives all that. If you don't have that will to want to be better than everyone, like, you'll never succeed in this sport. Like, you'll never be the best in the world. It's impossible.
How did you guys end up obviously you guys have a lot of great instructors out there in New Jersey, but how did you guys end up starting to train with John in New York? How did you guys make that transition to going to train with him every day?
Well, for me, it first started when Frankie Edgar, I forget which training camp it was, but he kind of started popping in to New York here and there. He would go on Mondays was like a real big day in the city for all the pro MMA athletes and like pro jiu-jitsu guys. Well, back then there really wasn't like a pro jiu-jitsu team, I wouldn't say, like for no-gi. So it was like mostly like the pro MMA athletes would all meet on Mondays. And I don't know if he invited me or if I invited myself. I can't really remember. But I knew that I wanted to be, you know, in a room with the tough guys. And so I got in the car with him and Chris Ligori, and I forget if there was anybody else that would come up with us. And I would go like probably once every 2 weeks or so up to New York. And I didn't really understand the significance of like training under John. Like, I didn't know he was like GSP's coach or anything like that. But I did recognize that like he had a good handle on the sport, and he understood elements of the sport a little deeper than like other people. But it took a little bit longer to like develop a relationship with him, because John is a very closed off person. So I kind of just like came in for a few training sessions here and there, and I would watch, and I'd watch him train and Brian Glick and see these guys and try to learn as much as I possibly could. But at the time I was so far away in South Jersey, it just wasn't possible for me to get there all the time. And then eventually, like Gordon said, I went to Rutgers, so I was a little bit closer to the city. So I'd add in, I would say probably once a week, maybe I started going into the city and having training sessions. And now I was doing it on my own time. You know, I wasn't just going up with Frankie or anything. And I just progressed, kept going more and more. It became more convenient because I was then teaching night classes and things. And they have an afternoon and morning class there. And I met Eddie Cummings up there sometime around when I won my first ADCC trials. And Eddie Cummings had told me, like, hey, man, like, you should show up to the morning class, which I just didn't know existed, by the way. I had no idea. There was like this 6 a.m. class where a bunch of like complete lunatics would show up, like trying to kill each other like early in the morning in the middle of a basement in New York City. And my experience with the morning class was horrible. The morning class basically ruined my life.
Were you a morning guy?
I am not a morning person. It's just so bad. Go ahead, Gordon. You look like you were going to say something.
Yeah.
The morning class is horrible. It's just
What?
It starts like 7:45 now, so you have to wake up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to wake up and like drive through like 2 hours traffic, like bumper to bumper traffic, and then get into like shitty New York and like get your shit kicked in by everybody at Enzo's. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah. And it's weird, man. It's like there's different killers that show up to the morning class than show up to the afternoon class. There's like guys like Doug Plankovic who are like longtime students of John. He's like this jacked gorilla looking guy, and he just like it's you train and you're like, oh, I'm a professional athlete that does this for a living, and you're like I'm obviously going to be much better than this guy, even if he is a little bit bigger and stronger, and you just get mauled. And you're just like, what just happened? Like, I don't understand.
It's a deceptive room there, especially in the morning, because like there is like a lot of older looking guys and stuff like that, you know. And then you go in, and those guys just murder you, just kill you. I mean, I remember I rolled with Silver Fox, and I think I rolled with Doug too. And those guys just, man, they killed me. Killed me.
What is it about John? Maybe we'll start with Gordon because he hasn't talked too much, and then go to Gary.
Sure.
What is it about John that? What's so different about him that, like, I mean, obviously his students are having such success. I mean, what is he doing better than everybody else as an instructor?
So I think the main thing is that he starts off by picking the main areas in current jiu-jitsu which have the biggest hole and making us as students good at those things. So, first it was leg locks. So, we were initially burst onto the scene and we were beating people who had been training way longer than us, who were way bigger than us, who were way more accomplished than us, by using specific movements that they weren't quite used to. So I think the biggest thing for John is he takes the holes in the sport and he says, okay, where does everybody suck, or where is the biggest issue in current grappling today, and then that's what we work on. So that's, I think, the biggest thing.
Because it's a good point to point out that John's watching a lot of film all the time, right? It seems like John's always, whenever I see him there in the back, he's watching matches, right? Breaking that down. So he's got just like this encyclopedic knowledge of not only jiu-jitsu matches but wrestling matches and like sambo matches, it seems like, and all these other martial arts.
Correct. Yeah.
Gary,
remember.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, literally today, it was funny. I was talking to John a little bit, and he was saying, he was talking about exactly like the same sort of concept Gordon was talking about. John always has like these little tangents that he goes on about like world history and stuff. And he was talking about the Spartans and how he said that like the people that ended up defeating the Spartans and becoming better than them basically implemented parts of what they were doing and then tried to make improvements on it. So they like innovated, right? They used longer spears. They increased the size, the depth of the phalanx, and eventually were able to overcome like what was that area's premier fighting force for, a very long period of time. And that's really a big part of this, is like what Gordon was just saying, is trying to find ways to innovate. So important. And you're not always going to succeed. Sometimes your innovations are going to suck. We make mistakes all the time. We think something's going to be good and then it doesn't end up being great. But that's I think that's how we stay ahead of the curve. Everything that we get a little bit better at and that starts to spread around, we just start innovating somewhere else. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I can't remember what my question was then. I just had an interesting one though. You guys have sort of outgoing personalities, especially like you see you guys show up at tournaments. Gary, you were in a American flag like robe at ADCC. Gordon, you showed up at tournaments dressed as a king. John's such a reserved guy. Does he ever see you guys like this and just like, oh man, what the hell?
100%.
John for the most part like looks at us behind closed doors and he just laughs. I mean, what else can you do besides laugh? He gets a kick out of it for the most part. It's not something that he would ever do or advise. But when he sees us doing it, he definitely gets a kick out of it.
Yeah, but he has conversations with us.
2018 Nogi Worlds, I sent the picture to Tom of me like the day before I was going to compete. I was there coaching, so I sent a picture of Tom with like the crown and the robe on, and Tom's like, "Holy fuck!" He's like, "Are you actually wearing that around the arena right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know. We'll see how it goes."
Yeah, he has had conversations with us though in the past, like explaining to us like the difference between amateurism and professionalism in sports, and how there's a huge component of entertainment value and entertainment factor that factors into how likable. Maybe likable is not necessarily the word. Is not just skill. It's also based on your entertainment value. What are you bringing to the table that opens people's eyes and they're like, oh, what the hell? What is that? Right? So like Gordon wearing some outfit or me or whatever the case may be, like you may laugh and you may say like, oh, that's stupid or whatever the case may be, and people may have their different opinions about it. But if it draws attention to the athlete, it's helping you as a professional. It's helping sell tickets. If people are more excited to see you grapple because you have a gimmick or you have some little thing that people laugh at or whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, you're increasing your viability as a professional. So he has had conversations with us about that and talking about how not necessarily that we should show up to grappling tournaments with a crown and a cape on, but that it is important for us to have, some sort of a personality outside of, just our skills and grappling and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially nowadays, there's so many different options of entertainment out there with all the different streaming sites and everything.
Stand out a little
you got to
bit,
stand
right?
out to get people to tune in.
Absolutely.
I wanted to hear a little bit of you guys talk about training with the other one currently. What it's like Gordon, what's around like if you got to train with Garry? What's Garry like to roll with?
So it's actually an interesting clash of styles. Like, my whole game is about negation of movement, and Gary's whole game is about creating movement to create scrambles to get to better positions. So it's pretty much a full round of like me trying my best to like hold like a tiny little squirmy man like in the same place. And Gary
Not doing you any favors there, Garry.
and Gary being like just barely slipping out of every position and like ending up on my back or something, or like on my legs and like get like I'm like an inch away from his back. I like work to like pass his guard. I hold him down for like 3 minutes, and the next thing you know, I'm like in an inverted heel looking cross ashigarami. I'm like, are you fucking serious? So it's like an interesting clash of like the complete opposite game. It's like a super big and unathletic like idiot in me, like trying to hold Garry down, and like a very precise like movement based game that Gary's trying to employ to make things happen.
Of course,
Yeah.
we saw that match there at ADCC. I think we've heard from Gordon, but I'm not sure. Have we heard Gary's take on that match and what?
I don't know if I've ever commented.
Have you ever said anything about that? Yeah, so obviously that was a crazy match, ADCC, and I remember Gordon. I believe Gordon said it was one of the hardest matches or hardest moments of his grappling career. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon, there. But I'm just curious what your opposite side there was on the match, Garry.
Oh yeah, well, so I went into the match a little bit of history. So like we said, when we used to train way back when, Gordon was closer to my size, and we had competitive rounds and this, that, and the other thing, and it was just a little bit different. Nowadays, we just don't train with each other as often. Back then, it was literally like, we're training together every single day, multiple rounds, because we were closely related in size, and it made more sense. Now with like injuries and stuff for me and for Gordon, like making sure that he's training with training partners that are actually his size. I mean, we just only train with each other more occasionally now. So every time we train, when we train, I'm like going 150%. Whereas back then, like I wasn't really doing it. Because like now I feel like if we're going to train and it's like, oh, well, now we're going to train like twice a week, 3 times a week, I got to give him the best round that I possibly can because, he's preparing for whatever. And also it's a little bit of an ego thing for me because I want to try to beat that big fuck. So, but obviously I know where I stand compared to Gordon and, the way that he reacts to my movements and things like that because we train with each other in the gym. So when we went out for this match, I knew that there's a pretty good chance I was going to get submitted considering what happens in the gym. But I still wanted to go out there, give my all, try my best. And I went for an entry really quickly into the legs. I think I turned my hips to face Gordon and tried to go for a leg entry that just like wasn't there. And he got onto my back pretty quickly in the match. And the first thing that I was thinking as soon as he got to my back was, fuck, everybody's going to think this is fake now. Like, nobody's going to believe that this is a real match because, like, in the first 2 seconds, like, Gordon took my back. And, like, obviously, like, we have tough rounds in the gym, but, you make mistakes, man. And he gets to my back, and I'm like, okay, Garry, you have to do every fucking possible thing you can to make sure that, like, you don't get submitted, like, quickly. But, like, pretty soon after that, I think even the entry itself, I can't see. I don't know if you guys are still playing it. The entry itself, like right from the beginning, as soon as he took my back, and so I have like one hand, and I'm fucking like he's like cross facing me with the other hand, trying to strangle, and I'm just like, okay, basically, this is where I would normally just tap because I know for sure I'm gonna get submitted, but. I have to fight fucking tooth and nail so that nobody like thinks it's gonna be like a fake match or something. So I'm literally like chins tucked. I'm like trying to fucking like peel with one hand. He just holds and staples my hand down, so it's literally just my face versus the choke, and it's fucking terrible. But and I'm like gurgling as he's trying to hold on as long as I possibly can. But, going into the match and during the match and everything like that, I wasn't like bummed out or anything that he won. I tell people this all the time, that like, especially as a teacher, like the best you could ever hope for is that your athlete does better than you did. If you're a teacher that wants everybody that you teach to never become as good as you're not a very good teacher. So for me, any victory that Gordon has is almost feels twice as good as any victory that I have. As competitive as we are and as ego driven as I am in the gym or whatever the case may be, but in real life, when he actually accomplishes something, man, like I'm so proud. I'm so happy for him. So, despite being, competitive and stuff, I love to win the match, of course, but like, when he wins, like I win in my eyes, so, it was a good moment for me. I wasn't like upset, I know like, obviously for Gordon it's a little different, but yeah.
All right, let's say hypothetically, you said you went for a leg entry in the beginning. Let's say that worked out. You get him. You got Gordon dead to rights. You got him in a heel hook. Your friend, your old student, ADCC
Break
absolute title on. You're breaking his leg.
Fuck yeah.
Doesn't have to be ADCC.
Tuesday night.
In training 100%.
In the morning class,
I have to like try to break Gordon because it's just, dude, he's got a lot going for him, man. He's bigger, stronger. A lot of times, like, in a lot of places, like he's better than me. So, whenever I get my opportunity, I got to go for it. Because I know the thing with Gordon is like he adapted that, that very good defensive ability that I have where, he likes to do a lot of his rounds just giving people submissions and things like that. So a big problem is like if I just go for an inverted heel hook and I just kind of like lightly hold on to it, Gordon is skilled enough that he's going to be able to get out of that like fairly quickly. So I can't just like kind of lackadaisically go for a submission. If I have a submission on Gordon, I pretty much got to go for broke or there's zero chance I'm submitting him. So it's a tough dilemma for me.
So no apprehension to fight
No,
Gordon,
zero.
or because people said it's like a little weird to fight a friend sometimes. It wasn't weird at all?
I mean, I guess a little, but I mean, it's something we do every day, and like we're hyper competitive and stuff. Like, I think he would have been a little pissed if he lost, but at the same time, like he would have been happy for me. At least I'd like to believe that. But yeah, man, I don't know. I didn't take it. I took it seriously in the sense that I'm competing in ADCC, but like when the result of it, I didn't take that like to heart or anything,
Gordon, I think somebody that everybody's obviously been looking forward to coming out of your guys' camp for a while is your brother. How's your brother's progression doing? What do you think we can expect out of your brother in the immediate future, and how are things going with him?
Man, that little fucker is way too good. Everyone always asks like, is Nicky gonna be better than you? It's like Nicky like dropped out of high school at 14 and started training full time with John. Like, I didn't start training full time with John until I was like 19. He should be way better than me. If I went back and competed against Nicky now when I was 18, he'd beat the shit out of me. So as long as he keeps training, he's definitely going to be way better than I ever will be.
Gary, he's got to be close to your size now, huh?
Yeah. Me and Nicky have some really competitive roles, and like I would say that he's been lifting and stuff now too, so he's a little bit stronger. And he's always had like a really weird freak strength, like even before he like kind of lifted and stuff, and even before he got a little bit bigger. Like, it's crazy. Like most kids, like when they're like 15 years old, like even if they kind of like went through puberty a little bit, like they're a little bit athletic, they just don't quite have that strength that like an adult man does. But like Nicky always found a way either to get around that or just like he was strong, man. But he definitely feels stronger than ever now. And yeah, he's very much like, he might not be like I don't know, like quite my size in pretty yeah, man, he gives me some of my best, most competitive roles. I really love rolling with Nicky. He's super athletic and like very smart and technical, and just he comes up with a lot of really great stuff. Like I have a great time collaborating with Nicky. I'll share something that has been working with me, and then he shares something that has been working really well for him, and it really works out well too, because me and him, just the same way me and Gordon are, have very different approaches to the sport and different things that appeal to us and different specialties and stuff. So I get a lot from him, and I think he gets a lot from me. And it's been really cool recently to see him get so much better at the stand-up portion of jiu-jitsu, because I was begging him and his brother to like take wrestling more seriously, like back when his brother was like a purple belt, and I was doing like wrestling privates and stuff, and I'm like, guys, you gotta learn how to do this. Like someday it's gonna be important. It's gonna help you guys. And Gordon would be like, this is fucking bullshit. This is stupid. And his brother would be like, I hate wrestling. This is garbage. And now it's like some of their favorite stuff to do. You know, as we know, Gordon's like now competing against some of the best wrestlers in the world. And, you know, Nicky, if you see it, see his like ADCC highlights and stuff, he's taking people down like a savage. So it's really cool to see.
Gordon, how often you roll with your brother these days? You're a lot bigger than him, but you guys roll?
Probably. It depends if he's like getting ready for a tournament or if he's cutting weight. He like stays away from me and tends to stay with guys like more his size. But right now, when there's like nothing coming up, we train. Maybe once or twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, and we do 10 sessions or so. So more than I train with Garry, because Gary's more focused on MMA and he's got some chronic injuries that he has to worry about. So I'm always afraid to hurt Garry in certain situations. But Nicky's a young little fucking freak, so I don't really care if I break it.
All right, let's say you and Nicky meet in the ADCC Absolute one day. Who do you think Big Gord's rooting for? Whose corner is Big Gordon?
I'll tell you the answer to that question right now. He's definitely rooting for Gordon. I think it's easier for me to answer, but what did he say that one tournament? Or was it? It was the picture, right? He posted a picture. I think it was on Nicky's birthday, maybe, and it was like a picture of you, and he said like, my son, I'm so proud of my son.
Oh yeah, it was Nicky's birthday, and he realized it's Nicky's birthday, to his credit, and he posts a picture. He posts a picture of me. I don't know if he did it on purpose or by accident, and he just goes, "My number one son," as the caption.
Nicky's birthday?
Nicky's birthday, I posted a picture of me instead.
Dude, my favorite thing at ADCC was your dad just posted up in one of the coaches' chairs and just sitting there, and like people coming up who are supposed to be coaching an athlete right now and just like getting down, squatting down on their knees next to him because the coach's chair is taken. He's just chilling in it all day long.
Mo is like, it's like, I'm trying to tell, it's like everyone's trying to tell me this old guy has to move. He's like, yeah, he's like, that's Big Gord. He can do whatever the fuck he wants.
People are getting kicked out of the venue. Meanwhile, Big Gord's got his own seat right next to the mat.
Yeah, literally just sitting in a coach's chair watching the event.
Mo like goes up to him and he's like, listen, Big Gord, like Sunday's the big day. Like they're not gonna let you sit here. And he's like, I was here yesterday, and I'm gonna be here today.
I mean, there's no arguing.
Absolutely hilarious. All right, speaking of ADCC, we already did this with Gordon and Craig when they were on, and Nick Rodriguez. I wanted to play some of Gary's ADCC highlights and just watch them with you guys and just
This is a good one right here.
bullshit about this stuff. This is one that everybody goes
This
crazy
is
about.
going to be in like a museum maybe about grappling.
First off, I love that Gordon is doing this interview right now, like in tiny, tight underwear. This is amazing.
That's how we get the viewers. That's how we get the viewers here. Yep.
No, yeah, he always calls in his underwear. We're used to it.
Oh my god,
yeah.
Amazing.
But this was the, even though you guys were the same weight class, I think this was the absolute, right?
Absolute first round.
Yeah, first round of the absolute. What were you thinking about this one? Edwin's style is sort of it works out well for going for this Kani Basami into the heel hook, right, Garry?
Yeah. So I actually had a conversation with one of my teammates. Our boss, well, he's one of my students actually, but also, trains with us at Enzo's. And he was like, he walked over to me, like leading up to the match. And I was thinking this myself, but like, I didn't communicate it with anybody. Like he opened for Kani Basami, but like Edwin was like maybe 6 feet from us. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, our boss. And, so anyway, thankfully he didn't hear him, and yeah, man, I was thinking about it from the beginning of the match, and It just so happens that I think he allowed an underhook fairly quickly because he really loves that flying triangle, and I promise you this, and I mentioned this to him as well, if I didn't immediately go for that scissor takedown, he would have flying triangled me. And I know it because I've seen him grapple a million times, and he's got such a savage flying triangle. And I was like, a lot of times when I set up the scissor takedown, I actually take a little bit of time. Like, I make sure I pull them to an angle. I really set it up. But there I was like, all right, I got the underhook. We got to go. And ended up paying off pretty well.
I mean, that's got to feel good, huh? That's like an all-time highlight submission to hit in ADCC Absolute. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, man. So I was super excited about that, especially because, I obviously knew that I didn't progress farther than third place in the tournament, and obviously wanted to win and stuff. So the Absolute's always like a cool like chance to kind of, continue to show your skills, because every time you compete, man, like you're always just, the moment it's over and you don't have any more matches, you're just dying to do it again. You're like, oh man, I wish I could just have one more. And the Absolute gives you a chance to do that. And I'm so glad they let me and Gordon participate. So that was cool.
Having a hard time looking at
So
you here.
dirty.
Your dyed blonde facial hair looks so ridiculous.
How many times how many times you drill that move a day, you think? Or what, do you drill that move often?
Pretty often. Not every day, though. John is a little scared to have me do it around the rest of the gym, because it starts to give people the idea that they should also do it. And during training, we actually don't allow the move. Like, even if I'm training with Gordon, even me being lighter than him and us both being good, like, we don't do the move in training, because it's just any wrong move, man, and you just land on somebody's exposed leg, your ass lands on somebody's knee. And even if Gordon's bigger than me, like, man, it's 170 pounds landing on the outside of your knee. It's not a safe thing, man. So what we do is basically, like, after the gym clears out a little bit, during sessions when we're getting close to competition, John will just have us do some Kanibasami drills, and we'll practice them and drill them, but we never actually do them live. This way we can kind of, we get all the skills down and repetitions and everything like that, the muscle memory for the move. But, we don't have the danger of trying to practice it in live training. It's one of those things, it kind of sucks to not be able to practice it live, because that's the way to best get anything done, with resistance. But you just can't do it. It's just there's way too much of a liability. You don't want to have somebody, and it's not like somebody's going to be out for a week because you land on their knee. Like, dude, that could be a career-ending injury.
It reminds me of one of my all-time favorite MMA moments, Ryo Chonin on Anderson Silva at Pride. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, man. That was great.
That is legendary. Gordon, Garry ever tried this Kanibasami on you in training?
Not live. I mean, we drove them a lot, but there's only people who have ever really jumped scissors on me are visitors that don't know it and then get yelled at by John. But none of the guys ever really try them. Garry does a lot of roll, like Victor roll entries, where he rolls through and he does almost like a forward roll, but he never jumps into my legs. He does a lot of rolling entries, but never jumps onto me.
I actually just put out a new DVD on like transition between submissions and standing grappling, like doing like wrestling into submissions. And that's one of the things that I cover. I show the Kanibasami, obviously, but I explain that like the safer way to do it is the rolling into the legs. I still do that even in like live grappling, because you're not jumping onto the person's knee. You can do it in a way that's much safer. So there's ways to kind of get the same job done,
Yeah, what's your instruction? It's like shoot to kill or something, I think it's called, right?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Bang, that's something I've always really admired about your style, is you're a guy who blends the wrestling together with submission grappling well, where it's not like you're just out there trying to wrestle. Like me and Gordon have talked about this on the show before, where some guys, they learn wrestling and they're just like it's in a folk-style wrestling match. Like you really blend wrestling together with submission grappling pretty well.
Yeah, one of my favorite concepts that John ever brought across to us is that we're always looking for submission opportunity from everywhere we possibly can. And that's like our main goal. And so whatever we're doing, whether it's guard passing, whether it's takedowns, whether it's trying to sweep somebody, the thought in the back of our minds always has to be, if the person, posts their arm, or if they react, hold, finish this person with a double leg. The main goal always is to submit the guy, right? The main goal is not necessarily pass this guy to mount. Eventually, the goal is to submit the person. Now, passing to mount may facilitate a submission, right? Like you see Gordon do that all the time with a head and arm strangle. Like, of course, that's a great way to go about it. But if somebody exposes something that makes them vulnerable to a submission ahead of time, man, you got to take that opportunity. And a lot of these matches, whether it's short time or whether it's a submission only type of thing, you got to spend the most amount of time possible looking for submission. And if I'm wrestling and I'm looking for submissions on you while I'm wrestling, and you're wrestling me and you're just looking to get a double leg, I'm way more likely to end up in submission situations than you are, right? So that helps us kind of create a imbalance in the submission rate of me compared to you when we're fighting.
All right, Caleb, if you want to just play the next, I'm just going to play this entire match in full, and then we could just bullshit about it while it goes on. Just because, I mean, this was this was an awesome match. This was, I believe, this was the 2019 match of the year for FloGrappling Awards, correct?
Yeah,
yes,
I believe
sir.
so.
Yes, sir.
Incredible match. Not the first time you guys have met.
Man, I thought on that throw by there, that slide by, that I was going to finish the match like within the first minute. Like I really thought I was going to get his back. Like, see, I followed so well here. And then he hit that one trip, and then I lost him a little bit. I'm like, damn it. I really thought I had him, man.
Gordon, I remember you were sitting there on the side watching this not far from me. What did you think watching this match when it happened?
I'm always really mad when I watch Garry compete. Same with Tom. Tom is like mad because Garry gives up positions. But I'm usually mad. I don't really care if he gives up positions, but what makes me mad is I know that he's just not even trying in most of his matches. I'm like, I know that Garry that you see is just not nearly as good as Garry actually is. And the few times that he does actually turn it up and just try to beat the shit out of everyone, you see like the best matches ever. You see like him and Paul Harris when he won the one. When you see the 155 EBI where he like submits everybody quickly, like that, like every now and then you see Garry like really turn it up. And I saw in this match, I was like, okay, like Gary's trying like to go, like Gary's trying to. So nice. I was just the first like couple seconds of the match, I just saw. I was like sitting on the sidelines, and I was like, all right, this is gonna be a bar murder.
What was the strategy here in this match, Garry? You fought Canuto before. Yeah. You guys had an interesting match.
Yeah.
You know, this time around, you kind of knew what you were getting yourself into, right? Canuto is kind of a hard guy to get a hold of, right? So what was the strategy going into this match?
Well, first off, let me talk about why I'm going 150% in this match comparative to what Gordon's talking about. In our previous match, he really pissed me off, and they made comments afterwards that pissed me off as well. Not necessarily anything that crazy, but in the previous match, I think we went out of bounds or something, and the referee was telling us to stop, and he just like kept going, and I was just, but like to a point where it didn't make any sense. You know, the referee was like literally like, "Come on, guys," and so I was pissed about that in our match, and then I lost by a point or something. Who knows? I don't really remember, and. I think afterwards he gave some interview, and the interview said something to the effect, oh, I remember. He like acted like he didn't know why I was pissed off and wouldn't shake his hand at the end of the match, but he knew exactly why. And in the interview, he was like, yeah, I don't know why, sometimes people get upset when you beat them, and I'm like, so I was like, I really have to like try to kill this guy. Like I can't leave any room for me to go to sleep that night and go, oh man, like I could have done something different to beat the shit out of him. So I literally just poured my heart and soul into this. I was gritting my teeth, walking back and forth probably for 20 minutes before this match started. And I just knew I was out for blood the entire time. So that's, if you wanted a little inside look into what I was thinking, that's what it was.
So the strategy for the match was to just go the whole time.
Yeah, as much offense as possible, and it's kind of like what Gordon said. I mean, when you see me do that, and you see me be a very different and much more effective grappler. So it was offense the whole time. I didn't really have. It's not like I walked in like with the Edwin match, and I was like, oh, this guy stands really tall. Like I'm gonna do this. Yeah. Then there was that one movement, and we like land out of bounds, and. I remember that happening and being like, oh, God damn it. Because I knew when we were going to reset. Because it's so different, like, when you land and then, like, you go to try to escape. And then when somebody resets, like, of course he's – this is, like, takedown attempts and attempts at back takes. And then all people are going to remember me getting pinned in side control. But thankfully, the rest of the match didn't quite go that way. But I remember being so pissed that this happened.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because when you land, yeah, you can try and squirm your way out of there, but a reset, they're always going to take their ultimate side control that they can get.
Yeah, the resets are always rough, man. It sucks, but it is what it is.
And this was such a spectacle match because I feel like it was like one of the last matches of day one. And you're right,
Yeah.
like Gordon and I remember Nicky and the whole team were in like, but it was like everybody was kind of crowded around your match there, and it was pretty much like I feel like everybody in the whole place was watching that match. And I don't know, I guess you've been to a bunch of ADCCs, Gary, and I feel like you've been to some ADCCs with nobody in the stands. Is it different? Do you get a different feeling when you do these matches and you can feel the entire arena watching you? Because right, some of these, 2013, where was is that China or is that?
Yeah,
China,
Beijing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It didn't seem like a lot of people there. So go ahead.
This is the first ADCC that was ever like really promotionally put together with an intent upon creating a spectacle. So every other ADCC is just kind of set up. It was almost set up in this, despite the fact that they're paying the athletes. It was set up like an amateur tournament, right? So it's just set up basically for people to compete and, see who's the best. And that's, kind of like what an amateur tournament is. It's just based off of like, people going in and competing. But this event was set up to entertain people, right? So that's the main difference. And this is kind of what I was talking about with like what John talked to us about the difference between amateur and professional athletes. So yeah, man, it was a completely different feeling. I mean, you walk out there and you see a crowd full of people cheering for you or against you or whatever the case may be. It's just so much more. You get so much more out of it, like emotionally, and despite grappling being a very cognitive sport and all that kind of stuff, like there is something to, feeling a crowd full of people, yelling and screaming compared to just, a room of like 10 guys kind of up in the stands, only supporting the, maybe one athlete or something. I had like my mom there with me in Beijing. That's pretty much it. I didn't even have a corner in Beijing.
I've been rewatching a lot of old ADCCs, and I was watching Barcelona 2009 in the finals. Like there's nobody there.
Yeah.
It's empty. But Gordon, when you're there watching Garry, because you're somebody, you play a lot more, I guess I would say, conservative game. You like to be in control a little bit more. Garry likes a little bit more wide open. Do you get any anxiety watching this, watching how wild his matches are compared to the way you like to have it?
No, because I know that everything we have very different games. I know that everything he's doing is very calculated. I get nervous watching people like Nicky Rod, where like I know like that. What he's doing looks kind of like what Garry's doing, where there's like a lot of action, but he doesn't know as much jiu-jitsu as Garry. He doesn't know the protocols that Garry does. Like he doesn't have as much time under John. So I look at Garry and I know that Garry's not going to make like an amateur tactical mistake and like give up a point or give up 2 points. Where like Nicky Rod, like not even does Nicky Rod not know the rules. He doesn't even know who the people are in his division. Like he has no idea who he's getting ready to compete against. So like I know that Garry is like a seasoned veteran and has been competing, and especially ADCC for, since 2013. So this is his, fourth, fifth, or whatever it is, ADCC. So I know that he's ready to make stuff happen when it has to happen. I know that if the guy has one hook in and there's a few seconds left, I know that he has the experience to not get scored on when he has to not get scored on and score on guys when the time comes.
Garry, looks like you're feeling the energy of the crowd right there. After you hit that double leg out of bounds, you came up like this, and then you see a little smile on your face. Do you feel that from the crowd there?
Absolutely, man. As the match went on, I felt more and more in control. Like I could feel him wearing down. I could feel that he was getting frustrated. There's a bunch of collar tie smacks that he tries during the match. And the moment I feel somebody resorting to like aggression, like there's no real technique behind it, I know I got him right where I want him. So I'm like smiling at him right now. I got to finish that double. He thought he wasn't going to get taken down. I finished that double leg, out of balance. It might not have counted for points, but it's demoralizing. I know that I'm winning both the technical battle and the emotional battle right now. And the crowd, cheering fed into that. And I got a little bit of motivation from Nicky Rod.
Hold on. Can you go back to the motivation you got from Nicky Rod? We got cut off a little bit there.
I said I got a little motivation from Nicky Rod flexing for the crowd after the double legs.
Yeah. Fair to say this is like one of your favorite matches, or?
Absolutely, man. So much movement, a lot of things happening. I really love jiu-jitsu like that. Ultimately, when you look at what's entertaining and what's not, it's movement. Like there's a reason that in professional MMA, when a guy gets pinned up against the fence for too long, or they're on the ground for too long, or whatever the case may be, they stop it and then they restart it in a standing position where they're no longer holding each other. It's because they feel as though nothing's happening. As long as if you're attached to somebody grappling and there's something happening, people love it. It's no problem. I'll give you an example. Like, I forget which fight it was. It wasn't too long ago, maybe a year ago. I watched a guy literally take somebody's back with a body triangle. Woo, another takedown out of bounds. This got to be so demoralizing. So I watched him take the back with the body triangle, like trying to set the strangle in, and it's like, that like as a grappler, like, all right, dude, like this guy's like pretty close to being cooked. The other guy's like just kind of holding on to the gloves, but because nothing was happening, people are booing, right? But it's so crazy to think as a grappler, like, dude, this guy's literally in the most winning position in the sport. He's about to strangle the guy, but people are booing, and it's because there's no movement happening. So it's really cool to have a match where there's tons of movement like this, tons of moves being done, because everybody loves to watch that. Similar to like my Paul Harris fight and stuff. And I tend to create that. It's a lot like what Gordon said. And I take the reason I like to create so much movement is because I think movement creates opportunity. Every time I off balance somebody and they post on the floor, I feel like there's opportunities to submit. And that's what I'm looking for with all this kind of movement. That was the end of it right there. I guess it's pretty close to getting the back.
Yeah.
Similar to the Wagner Hosha match the 2 years before that. I was right in with that one hook. Oh no! It was finished.
Overtime now.
It's overtime. Okay.
Yeah.
I forget. So yeah, man, I think it's definitely one of my favorite matches.
Gary, how's your cardio so good? Because we see people who don't move 1/10 this amount in a match and still gas out. How are you still going 100 miles an hour after all that action?
True.
I mean, I was definitely a little tired, but I knew he was exhausted too, so that helps. Knowing that like you're both a little bit tired. I'll use one Frankie Edgar quote. Like,
nice.
You're supposed to be tired.
Nice move,
yeah.
A little spin.
Yeah.
Supposed to be tired.
You're supposed to be tired. Like that's what we're doing here, right? So like there's a little bit of like you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You hear that quote all the time. There's a little bit of that going on where it's like okay, I'm breathing heavy, like this is tough, but at the same time it's like okay, that's what's supposed to be happening right now. Like you're competing in the literal Olympics of your sport basically, and competing against somebody that's the best in the world, you're having a really tough dynamic match. Like you're supposed to be tired, but keep going. As long as you don't let that ruin you mentally, then it's not too much of a problem to be tired. But I would say in general, this is how I grapple. This is what I like. I like that fast-paced movement style. So as long as you're used to it, it's no problem. But when you break out of your comfort zone, like if I was having a match like this and I didn't like to have matches like this, maybe I would start to freak out a little bit. But this is my my bread and butter. This is what I love. So for me, this is exactly what I want. So I still feel confident. As long as I still feel confident that I'm going to win the match, being tired is not that big of a deal to me.
Gordon, put yourself in Canato's shoes. Say you're training, and you got Garry, Ultimate Garry, firing on all cylinders here. How annoying is this for you as a training partner that he just got so much energy, never stops? How hard is it to deal with?
Man, it's like being exhausted and having someone putting constant pressure on you is like one of the worst feelings of your life. Like you just feel like it's like the closest I can get to what I imagine drowning being like. Like when you just have nothing left and a guy's just walking towards you and you just like he has an endless amount of energy. There's nothing worse than that.
So somebody's asked the same question a whole bunch of times here in the YouTube comments. I'm going to go ahead and get it out there. They want to know from both of you guys, what do you think your toughest match of your career was? Maybe Gordon, you can go first.
Toughest match of my career. It'll probably have to be Pena the first time. I was like super sick for that match leading up to it. So to do it was like 45 minutes, I think. That was pretty physically taxing. And then just mentally, like going out and getting submitted, like that was the first time I'd been submitted at black belt and since purple belt. So I think that was probably overall the toughest match for me. I mean, physically, I've had matches where I was more tired. Like the Joao match was that was pretty hard too because I was injured, so I had to put out twice as much energy in the last 5 minutes to not get my guard past. Like I couldn't high leg over like I usually would with my one leg. So I pretty much just had to let him pass the north-south and either try to bring my knees inside from north-south or turtle. So that was pretty physically taxing. But I think overall, probably top two would be Felipe and Joao. But I think Felipe overall would probably be the number one because it's a longer match. And there's a huge weight difference with Joao too. But I think just overall, the match I think with Felipe was harder.
What about you, Gary? Your toughest match of your career?
Oh, yeah. So I was trying to think about it as much as I could while Gordon was talking, and I had a few ideas floating around in my head. But I would say one of them was definitely the Crone Gracie match. That was pretty tough. He's a unique individual, similar style actually. Very attacking. Constantly trying to apply some sort of offense. Because I think he's similar to me. At this stage of the game, like. He's a very confident dude. Like I think he really believes. Like when he went out there in that Beijing ADCC, like he really believed that he was better than me. He really believed that he's better than everybody in there. So like when he goes out, he's like, all right, whatever, screw it. Like I'm just gonna attack, and like I'm gonna beat these guys. It's only a matter of time. And it was cool to be able to get the upper hand. I ended up on his back and ahead on points and stuff. And, he tried to come back and eventually took my back and strangled in the last couple seconds. But it was a really tough competitive match for a lot of different reasons. I would say the pressure of the fact that I'm competing against probably the favorite to win in the division. It was my first ADCC. Again, like I said, the caliber of the opponent was high, super confident, super tough, a very, very technical, probably more technical than me at that point in time in my career. So that made for an interesting mix and very tough match. I think that's probably, looking back, there might have been something maybe tougher but it's not like, coming to my head right now. So I would say that's probably a good one.
Something, you can cut the clip now, Caleb. Something that obviously not your toughest match, but I think the fans would love to hear about would be from Sao Paulo, your match with Dylan Dennis. I think I'd like to hear both your guys' opinion on it because that was a big rivalry going into that match. And then, I mean, we know how ADCC does it. They probably threw you guys together early on purpose. Maybe
Dude, for sure.
Yeah.
I think they definitely knew. They're the way those guys work, like 100%. I know that they have to like meet with each other and like whisper to each other like, oh yeah, how could we screw with these guys? And here's how I know. Forget about the Dylan Dennis thing. You could speculate as much as you want. Here's how I know that's what they do. Because they put me in the absolute the year in Beijing. Because I was like, hey guys, like, can I be in the absolute? And back then, like, I didn't even have a corner. So nobody from my team was in it. So they didn't care. It's not like the one where I was in with Gordon and there was like a little bit of a debate as to whether or not we could do it. Because they really hate like the idea of somebody potentially doing a fake match, right? So they're worried like if teammates go in, right? So there was no conversation like that. They were just like, all right, like this dude's entertaining. He's going to put on a show. Like, of course, we'll put him in the absolute, right? So I got the okay that I was in the absolute, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, well, when they make the absolute, like they'll probably like put me with somebody, like they might be bigger, but like they're not going to put me with like the biggest guy in the division, right? Like, why would they do that? That wouldn't make any sense, That wouldn't seem to be like the fair way to do it per se, but that's exactly what they did.
Cyborg, right? I think they gave you Cyborg.
Sorry?
They gave you Cyborg, right? Is that who they gave you?
No, they gave me Buchecha.
Oh, another year you fought Cyborg.
So Buchecha was my first match in the absolute. I like look at the bracketing, like when it's done for the absolute. I'm like, okay, motherfuckers. Okay.
They did Keith Krikorian dirty too this year.
They love that shit. They're like, oh, let's put the little tiny guy with the giant guy. They did it to me again the next ADCC, and where was that? Was Finland the next one in 15?
No, so in 2015, they gave Buchecha first round, and then they had a pullout, and they put you with Cyborg.
Yeah, that's why you fought Cyborg.
I came in like shirtless from the stand, like probably like drinking soda and shit. Like they're like, yeah,
classic.
They're like, yeah, you want to do another match? I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this. And then I went against Cyborg, like the second biggest guy in the division.
That's right.
Gordon, when you saw that Gary had Dylan early in that Sao Paulo bracket, what do you think?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I was like, Dylan thinks he's a leg locker, but his leg locks are nowhere near as good as Gary's. And then as the match was happening, I saw that Dylan was kind of backing out of every exchange pretty early, and Garry was the one that's like willing to stay in the pocket. So I was like, yeah, this isn't going to go so well for Dylan.
What did you think, Garry?
Yeah, I think that was another match where, like you guys said, there was like a little bit of bad blood, a little bit of drama. So it was another match where mentally I was like, okay, you're 100% on in this match. And I think you see, if you watch the Canuto match and then you watch that match or vice versa, I think you'll see a lot of similarities in the intensity of which I'm grappling. So same sort of thing, just like Gordon said, I felt him like kind of trying to run away from the exchanges. And I actually think John told me after the match he had heard Marcelo cornering and Marcelo like yelled out, "Run!" And from like one of the exchanges, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what it felt like was happening. And I kept trying to like drag him in bounds to make sure that I get my submission attempts off. ADCC does a good job of recreating like submissions when you go back in bounds, like if you have one as they're running out of bounds. But like I hate that sort of feeling. Like anytime somebody resets me, and like the one guy's gonna argue you were in this position and this, that, and the other thing. So I usually tend, just the way that I am, so that there's no argument, I tend to take a less good position when it's reset than whatever I had before. So I'm like, fuck this. Like, I got to keep this in the center. Like, I got to allow this, like, submit. Like, I got to find a way to submit this guy in bounds so that there's no, question about me submitting him. And I eventually managed to drag him back after a takedown and get into that leg entrance.
Nice. So we've been having a little routine lately on here where the person who was on the show the day before asks like a question for the person who's coming on next. So okay. Friday we had Eddie Bravo on. It was a fun one.
Oh yeah.
And then I would not normally ask Gordon this question, but I got a feeling I know how he's going to react. But Gary's question for you guys, or Eddie's question for the both of you is, what do you think of Lachlan Giles' outside Senkaku game?
The position he's playing, where he uses essentially a 50-50 with his legs across the far hip, it's a position that we play as well. The position itself is great. I just don't. Lachlan bases his entire game off of 50-50, which is a symmetrical leg locking position. So it basically requires that more than your opponent in that certain position. Whereas everything that we do, we base our attacks off of asymmetrical leg locking positions where you have a clear inherent advantage from whatever position you're using, whether it be outside hashigurami or cross hashigurami, where your feet are relatively safe compared to the exposure that you have on your opponent's legs. The position that he plays is great, and he has some good ideas from there. I just think that the thought process that he has in preferring 50-50 over the other positions are a little bit off. The fact that he said that outside heel looks don't work, or that outside heel looks aren't really that good, is just like complete bullshit because they're great. You just need to know how to finish them. I
would love to watch him train with Nicky and say that.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you think that would go? How do you think Lachlan and Nicky would go down if that happens?
Oh,
Set it up.
I think that'd be a great match. Really, really good for Nicky too, especially Lachlan coming off that that ADCC absolute winning streak there. But as far as how the actual match would go, based off of like what I see from Lachlan, unless he decides to take a different strategy, because he does try to use his head a little bit. If he's smart, he would try to stay out of leg entanglements completely. And based on what he did with Gordon, he didn't do that. He did try to use leg entanglements, but again, Gordon's much bigger, so maybe he thought it was his only hope of winning the match. Is like, well, if I don't leg entanglement, what the fuck am I going to do, right? But maybe with Nicky, he would think that maybe he could win some other way. But if he engages in leg entanglements the same way that he engaged with Gordon, I really think I see Nicky counter leg locking him and off one of the exchanges pretty quickly. I don't see him surviving for too long.
All right, so I don't speak Japanese. Outside Senkaku is 50-50. Is that correct? When Eddie asked about outside Senkaku? Somebody educate me on this. What? I think we might have lost Garry. Go ahead, Gordon, while Garry comes back.
Okay. So basically it's 50-50. So you have 50-50, but instead of your legs being triangled on the outside of the hip, he throws his leg across to the far hip. So you have essentially a 50-50, but you hide your own leg by throwing your foot across to the far hip. We call it inside out after Garami. He calls it outside Senkaku.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, so to follow up on that, tomorrow we have Bia Mesquita coming on. Another legend, ADCC champ, and all that. If one of you guys could come up with a question for us to pass on to Bia Mesquita tomorrow.
I think Gordon knows her game a little bit better than me.
It doesn't even got to be jiu-jitsu related. You could ask her anything. You could ask her her favorite type of pizza if you want. I don't know.
A question for her.
While he thinks of this, Gary, we have a fan question here for you. Gordon already answered this when he was on with Nicky Rod, but people want to know, do you think if Carol Baskin killed her husband, Gary?
Oh, bro, come on. Listen, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the setup. I mean, is there a chance that maybe the dude found a way to get away from that crazy old lady? Maybe. I can see that. It is set up in a way where maybe he escaped. But what's odd about that is that he kind of just left his whole family out to dry, and they didn't get, I can't. It's hard for me to believe that he would have escaped, disappeared, and then never found a way to give back to his family or anything like that, and then they would have been a part of a documentary where they said yeah, she got all the money, and that's so odd. And then,
if you escaped, you'd have to leave all the money behind, right? So
yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, that's just so you guys know, that's my backup plan. If anything crazy happens in my life and it's going to ruin my whole life, I'm just going to Costa Rica and I'm just going to live on the beach. I'll probably teach a little bit of jiu-jitsu, sell some coconuts,
go to Oklahoma,
sleep with some beautiful women. It's going to be a good time. What people don't understand, I think sometimes people that want to commit suicide don't understand is you need to go to Thailand for a weekend and experience that, or Costa Rica. And you did it. There are things that you don't living in the United States that you just don't understand how the rest of the world is. There is hope, my friend, for a much better life. Probably selling coconuts on the beach there is going to be much better than whatever stressful shit you have to deal with now. Go move out there, give life a second chance. I'm telling you, Thailand, Costa Rica, just give it a shot.
Truth.
All right, Gordon, you come up with anything?
I got my question. So, as many people know, a lot of the women for ADCC kill themselves doing a weight cut because there's only two divisions. There's under 135, I believe, and over 135. Because no one wants to do the heaviest division because it's just 135 up.
You got to fight Gabby Garcia then.
Yeah.
I'll fight Gabby.
If ADCC comes out with a new weight class, does she still plan to cut to under 60, or does she plan to go up to the middle weight class?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a good
awesome
topic to talk about too.
Yeah.
I have a fan question here from somebody who wants to know from the YouTube comments, what is the hardest submission to escape? They're asking. Maybe Gordon go first.
Ooh. I mean, a fully locked rear naked is hard to beat. A back triangle is hard to beat. Those probably are my two biggest ones. Because the rear naked, obviously, you're completely behind the guy, and you have a reinforced wedge with the figure four of your hands locked, so it's pretty hard to get out. Especially with the body triangle, and a back triangle because, again, you're behind the person, and the reinforced wedge with your legs this time, so you have no real ability to explode out or stack your partner. You don't really carry any of the weight. The back triangle and the rear naked would probably be the two biggest ones for me.
I'm interested to hear Gary's because Gary escapes from everything. Master of escapes. So
I would definitely agree with Gordon. He took probably the biggest two, but the one that I would add to that conversation would be a darce where somebody has stepped a leg over the body. If you get a full katagatame and a leg over the body, that's a tough submission to get out of if it's being well applied.
All right, you started something. There's already a few people in the YouTube comments calling for Gary versus Gabby, so probably going to see some memes out of that.
Uh-oh.
But, all right, let me get it. We got a few more minutes. One more that they're asking is, who has The best Achilles lock that you've trained or competed against?
Who, me or Gordon?
Whoever wants to go first. Maybe Gary, you could kick this one off.
So, okay, this is a little bit tough because there's a big difference between mechanical proficiency and like actual ability to break somebody because of like size and strength. I would say if I'm going with the most likely to break me or anyone else, not because of mechanical proficiency, but just because of size and strength, I would go with Luis Panza. I competed against Luis Panza in Nogi Worlds Absolute, let's say 2014. I don't know, maybe. Maybe not. Could have been a little later. It's hard for me to remember. But
was it at the Cow Palace?
Sorry?
In San Francisco?
Dude, I can't remember. I just know I competed against him in a Nogi Worlds Absolute. I can't remember when. Maybe it was 2016. It's like really hard for me to remember. But anyway, so Panza was going for Achilles locks and toe holds the whole time, and me being like at the time I was studying a lot of leg locks and things. I'm like, I want to beat this guy like with leg locks, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna beat him with an Achilles lock or a toe hold or something while he's going for them on me. And every time I would get into a leg lock exchange and he would lock up an Achilles lock, I could feel my tibia bending in half. And I was like, okay, you gotta bail. Like, so I would turn my leg the opposite direction so there was no pressure on the Achilles. And I tried that for like 6 minutes. And I was like, nope. I was like, not doing this anymore. So I was like, I guess I'm going to change the strategy and just try to take his back. So I like went for like a fake half guard sweep and then went to his back and strangled him. But he had I could tell that like he had bad intentions with the Achilles and could snap it in half. I would say mechanical proficiency wise, I didn't feel it in my match with him, but just from what I've seen, I would give it to Edwin Najmi. In his early career, Edwin was submitting a lot of people with straight Achilles locks, was having a lot of success, and he was breaking people, and he was never like some, like yoked guy or anything like that. I believe he was breaking people because of mechanical proficiency and not just size and strength.
All right, this will be the last one. This guy's asked this a few times. I'll let Gordon answer this one. What's your relationship like with Renzo Gracie?
Enzo's great. He comes in. John teaches most of the classes, but Enzo's there. At least a few times a week I see him. Always happy, always upbeat, always has a story. Pretty much you can start talking about any random topic and I'll have a story for the topic. It's just a great guy to be around. Always talking about something. He always comes in. He's got a story from 30 years ago or a story from last week. There's that story a few years ago about him getting into a fight at one of the clubs with the bouncers. There's always something going on with Renzo. So it's always something interesting. He was talking about a couple weeks ago I think the leader of France's wife or something. There's always something crazy going on with Renzo, whether it's for good or for bad. So it's always a fun time.
All right, so we got just a few minutes left. I'll let you guys both end with a little statement to your fans. On the way out, maybe Gary kick it off and say whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for having me on. And anybody that's watching, thanks so much for your support. Or even if you're just somebody that logs on to Instagram and just bitches at me in the comments all the time, thanks for keeping me busy. It's nice of you. Now I have a lot of fun arguing with people and stuff. So even if you're somebody that doesn't support me and you're engaging, I'm thankful for you as well. Hopefully everybody, obviously we're dealing with a really tough time in this with this quarantining and the virus and everything like that. So, hopefully everybody stays safe. I wish the best for everybody and their families in a tough time like this. And, I'm really looking forward to a time where we can start, reaching some level of normalcy again and kind of get back to training and people can get their jobs back and kind of go back to the way things were so that we can get everything going again and there's going to be a little less less suffering. So I'm hoping to see that sometime soon. And love everybody and thanks so much for everything. Appreciate it.
All right, Gordon, are you going to take this time to talk to your fans? Or are you going to clap back at the haters? Which one are you going to go for today?
I pretty much have done both. I've been here a few times. I've both talked to the haters and the fans. So pretty much everything everything Garry said. I'm going to be on here a little bit more the next few weeks. So, for the fans, you start thinking about some intelligent questions maybe you want to ask, whether it's technical or otherwise. I'll be happy to answer some. We did some fan questions today. I'll be happy to do some more fan questions, whether it's a technical breakdown or if you want to see want to pull up a match and do a breakdown of a match, it'd be good to go over maybe for you guys so you can stay active mentally when you can't be active physically. So keep that in mind going forward.
All right, thanks, guys. Everybody watching at home, we got a crazy week coming up. Tomorrow we got B. Mesquite, like we said. Wednesday we got Buchech and Perguisa. Thursday, Galvao and JT Torres. Friday, maybe the one I'm most excited for, Big O Orlando Sanchez is going to be coming on. Who knows what's going to happen with him. Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. And all right.
Orlando and Big Gore, same show.
Orlando Big, yeah. Tell Big Gore we need him Friday, 5:30. Call in with Orlando. Yeah.
Dude. So you guys have no idea the untapped potential.
No, we were talking, Garry. We were talking about. Gordon says he doesn't want to do this live. We got to do this off the air, but we want to do match breakdowns with his dad one day, where Gordon and his dad watch them, and then his dad talks about what's going on.
I think we should just do it live and just go with it. That would be amazing.
You never know.
I hope you understand the liability associated with doing that live. Is there's a good chance that you guys just lose all funding after the first 3 minutes of the conversation.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for calling in, and see everybody tomorrow.
Later, guys.
Thank you.